So I'm wondering this morning, when is the last time you encountered God? Truly. When you went up to that metaphorical mountain and you took off your sandals and you opened your heart and you opened your mind and you let God come in. When might that have been? In our readings today, we have a story of Moses. Now, Moses has talked to God a couple of times in his life, and he has been told and put as the leader that took the people of Israel out of bondage and brought them into liberation and freedom to a desert. He took them out of Egypt, and they were set forth on a journey from God in the middle of a desert. And in this desert, the people were uncertain, and they made obstacles for themselves. And they questioned what God was doing in their life. They had said yes to God, but they were still in the desert. And they wondered what this would be all about. And in these wonderings, Moses wondered as well and went up the mountain to talk to God, to ask for guidance. The guidance he brought back for living in the desert and for the foreseeable future is what we call the Ten Commandments. We still call it guidance for our life. But even though he did this, the people still wondered. And Moses himself, who had gone on the mountain and come down, we are told that his face was transfigured. It was transformed. Because God had stood with Moses, and Moses had received God into himself. And he changed so much that he had to veil what he did to the people. And he only unveiled when he came to God. But even with all of that, Moses still had a singular job. Moses was to be with the people in the desert. Moses was to walk with them and prepare them for the land that was promised, to prepare them for the milk and honey. Even after seeing God, Moses was never allowed to cross into the promised land. His job was only to prepare the people for that time. And then we have the story of Jesus that we are told went up to the mountain. You go to the mountain in the Bible. When you want to speak to God, go to the mountains. You do that. And opened himself to prayer. And we are told that he brought Peter and John and James. And we are told while they were really sleepy, they kind of stayed awake. And they were like, what's happening? And they were able to look, and they saw Jesus standing with Moses and Elijah. He stood there with the prophets being instructed. He stood there in this metaphorical prayer of God and was prepared for that which he was about to do. We are told he was being prepared for Jerusalem. We do not know if he exactly knew he was walking to his death. But we do know that he knew it would not be easy. We do know that he was being prepared to do the ministry and to become the Messiah, to become the person that God meant Jesus to be in the world. And I'm wondering, yet again, when have you encountered God in your life? When has your life met God and you've been called out of yourself to become something wholly other, or at least significantly other? Now, I am told by parents, I am not a parent, so I will own that, but I am told by parents that when you have the calling to become a parent and a child enters your life, that your life is changed forever. That there is this marker that I know, and most parents I know, it is before the kids and after the kids. And life is forever changed. That you never get to go back and you are never not a parent. That is a moment of total transformation. That is a moment of living into the calling of what it means to be a parent. For others, perhaps it was the moment you entered into a marriage. For you, and I don't know, most long-term relationships I know, you are forever changed in that encounter. Good, bad, or indifferent, you are changed by sharing and opening up your life to someone new and to someone other than yourself. Those are two examples. I'm sure there are others. Can you think of one for yourself? For me, now, I have a hard time listening to God. And sometimes it takes years, even decades, for me to listen to God. And I know in my life, since I was a little child, that gender was a thing in my life. I knew it because as a small child, waiters and waitresses would come into my life. They would look at my mom and they would say, "What was your son like for lunch or dinner?" And my mom would get really irritated. She would get in this voice that is only a mom's voice, and she would say, "Excuse me, I have 2 sons and I have 2 daughters. This is my daughter." As if that would settle all matters and all things. And as things went, I knew it was in my life, but didn't really get it. And it was not until 2009, and I am a doctoral student, and I am teaching in the Harvard College, and I am working with undergrads, and I am teaching 18 of them. And it happened to be a course on LGBT politics and film. And as we watched 70 films that semester, we talked about the ways that gender and sexuality were in the society and in our lives. And when it peaked up into the late 60s and 70s, into the years when I had been alive, I told them stories. And I told them stories about my life. And you know what? They caught something that I was clueless about. They caught on to something in these stories that I had stubbornly not looked at. In my stories and in their interpretation as they heard them, they looked at me and they said, "Oh, Iain, yes, you're trans, aren't you?" And I'm like, What? See, this is the part that sometimes when God is trying to tell you something, like for me, I have to have multiple nudges. And sometimes those nudges are more pushing from the backside, and sometimes they are an absolute kick in the backside. My students were part of that. Along with, coincidentally, just so happened, that the founder of Trans Studies was the visiting professor in the department I was working in. And I had met her, and we had talked, and we were going to go to coffee, and I had dutifully put it off, week after week after week. And it was not until the end of the semester, when there was no other chance at all, that she said, "We got to go." So we went out to drinks one evening. And in that conversation, which was one of the most grace-filled conversations I have had in my life, I talked around and around and never said the word, and around, and went on this long, twisted, no, I can't go there journey for 3 hours. I did come out of that meeting and kind of reflected back, because I'm a good introvert, and went, oh no. Or perhaps another word I won't say in church. And I knew that I had just been given that kick. And then I went, and like a good academic scholar, I should read about this thing. And I had bought every academic book there was possible back then. Every single one of them was on my shelf that I had dutifully never opened. And so I did. And over the course of the next spring, I worked with my spiritual director and my counselor, and I came to the decision and the knowledge that God was calling me to become Iain. And when I made that decision, I called up my best friend, said to Cameron, who was a priest in the diocese, now he is rector at St. Aidan's, also a trans man, and I said, we got to go to beer. And he came, and I told him my story. He had known and walked with me, but I said, I made the decision. I'm going to become Iain. And then he looked at me, and to my total surprise, he said, oh my God, now I can tell you. And I'm like, tell me? Tell me what? He had transitioned 5 or 6 years before I had, and in that process and in that time period, he had had a dream. He had had a dream of the two of us standing up on a platform, both as men, talking to crowds. And indeed, as priest of the Episcopal Church, the two of us have stood on podiums and we have talked to crowds. That, for me, was the final, yes, you're on this path. But I will tell you that it came with uncertainties along the way, that it came just like the people of Israel, what have I done moments. It came with all the things that happen to one when everything in your life is transfigured and transformed. It was all part of the journey. And so, I ask of you, what is your journey? What is God asking of you? Those are the particulars of my story. What are the particulars of your story? What hard thing is God preparing you for, opening you up for? In what way is God nudging you and saying, come forward, I have a path for you. Open up and let yourself be transformed.